There's no escape from alienation in life, but there are few people more alienating than the most alienated. And this has always led to a certain militancy around those groups. Modal politics, politics that do not dominate society, tend to run from mainstream opinion and thus attract people who are harmed by society the most. It doesn't matter whether they're right or left, that tends to be who they attract. The well functioning, those who already benefit, don't tend to head to such movements. Now, revolutionary movements, counter-revolutionary movements, both attract these people, and they're always there, and they always have to be incorporated and basically given some skills. But the problem that we have in today's society is that you can build a cargo cult off of these forms of politics, stream it with bots, low level engagement, temporary donations, etc., and keep yourself into the seeming like a big movement. And the more bombastic and incoherent your rhetoric, the better it is for attention. Now, why is this tolerated in our society? Well, one, you can't really crush this stuff. Or two, it actually helps mainstream political movements. People throw themselves up against the wall of their frustrations and really only hurt part of the state that they think they're opposed and empower someone else. So what seems like an anti-elite politics becomes a counter-elite politics where you're really picking some other elite in society that already has power, adopting their rhetoric, tailing them, and throwing that up. That's why it's persisted and allowed. If you don't understand that, then you are likely to be a sucker. Now, I see more and more of these popping up today because it doesn't take a lot to do. Start a channel, farm engagement, buy some bots. You don't even have to buy the bot yourself. Probably better that you don't. Just be useful to someone who can use you to make it seem like there's action. Go there and support something else. And you can pretend you're an independent political movement, but you're not. Now, people think I'm just talking about right-wing movements, but left-wing movements do this too. In some ways, most movements involve astroturf at this point. There's no way around that. But the patheticness of the mystification going on here, and I mean this almost in a clinical sense, right? Pathos, the feeling, is that you are preying on people's rage and emotions and their own powerlessness. And instead of empowering them to do something immediately with their lives, what you're offering them is a fanatic-like way to engage in discourse all the time and to be caught up in the prestidigitation of words. Some of the people who engage in this are not stupid at all. Absolutely not. And one of the problems that you have is as much of the online idiocy that emerges from this is that we often write these people off as stupid when they are absolutely not. But the thing is, there's no way to engage in this directly either. When you try to engage them, they just double down on why don't you already agree with them, which they're not even doing in bad faith. They sincerely think this is a way of the world, but we are dealing with highly marginalized people. And I don't mean marginalized in the sense of oppressed, although that actually works in a similar domain, but in the sense of relatively powerless, who see hope in this projection of transcending something. Now, again, what they are doing, what they're actually doing is throwing themselves up against the wall of what they see as a unified thing, positing another unified movement, which may or may not be real, usually not, and washing up on the shores of empowering one part of the state against the other. So the anti-politics just becomes a politics. I don't know what you do with this, but it's not great. But it's real easy and cheap to do. And there's so much loose money flowing around in these various neoliberalized conceptions of politics where you're taking micro donations without even a steady regular investment, that it's hard to tell how much of it's even real. After all, fake engagement becomes real engagement eventually. The real thing to look at here is what function does this serve and what it has done so far. And not just in the case of the radical politics around what's left of the Bernie movement, or even the pseudo politics of the alt-right. And I say pseudo politics because it liquidated itself into nothing very quickly. It ended up opposing the establishment by empowering part of the establishment. Populism tends to do this. It misunderstands the nature of power and sees it as a monolith, of which everyone else is also a monolith against, thus justifying class collaboration and thus also allowing parts of the power structure into the anti-systemic movement. So the anti-systemic nature is seen. Now, the left has made a lot of mistakes, and so has the right. When you seem to have the power of an anti-systemic movement and then you back a systemic candidate, you automatically lose that power. And there's no way to appropriate these terms and pretend that you aren't tailing or backing them. And that doesn't matter whether it's communists picking up progressive talking points or MAGA communists picking up Republican ones. They can say that this is beyond that. And they can throw in an incoherent melange of various theories at you to justify what they are doing. But ultimately, all they are doing is pretending to be anti-systemic and ultimately throwing their support behind part of the status quo. If they were really interested in breaking with it, they would be breaking with tailing politics altogether and trying to build something organic and new, specifically with a class basis and not one based off of particularly alienated and modal ideologies. But that would lose that sense of identity so tied into it. And again, for people who don't have a lot else in their life, this is something they cannot risk losing. Don't be a sucker. Keep your peace.